everybody, welcome to Simple Hobby Homesteading. I am Shenna and today we are going to make soap. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this video. I have recorded it several times before and either it didn't upload right or it was taken down, I can't remember which. Either which way, it has not made it to you guys yet. And so I'm recording a whole new video and I decided I'm going to make this soap accessible to everybody as far as ingredients, as far as the mold. I mean, everyone can get the stuff for this. So nothing super special. It's just kind of an old-fashioned recipe of soap and super good for your skin. Absolutely incredible. Oh, I forgot my dogs were in here. The pitter-patter is Buddy, our three-legged dog. And he just woke up from a nap and I forgot that he was in here. So if you hear a pitter-patter, that's Buddy. Anyways, and there's also a German Shepherd in here somewhere. And a Husky might whine from the other room if she hears me talking and she's not here with me. So the German Shepherd's right there. They're all in here. Okay, so what do you need for this basic batch of soap? And I'm going to give you everything, the exact amounts to fit in this Pringle can. It's an empty Pringle can. We emptied it out. I rinsed it out. It makes a really nice round soap, which is so cool. So first thing you need is a Pringles can. It is an empty Pringles can. It's the standard. And it can be the Walmart brand, I don't care, 4.5 ounces is what it is. Not the little short one, we're talking about the bigger one. Alright, so you need what's called a mold, and that's what we're going to pour the liquid soap into, and it's going to set up. So what do you need in your soap? And I'm going to explain kind of why we have these oils in here. Castor oil. You can find this at Walmart or your grocery store in with like the first aid, vitamins, aspirin, that kind of stuff. It's going to be with the laxatives and the hemorrhoid treatment, all that kind of stuff. Castor oil. And this is just a nice little bottle of castor oil, and this is going to make us a couple batches of soap. Now, the reason we put castor oil in soap is because that's what gives soap bubbles. People love when their soap lathers up and gets all bubbly. The bubbles do absolutely nothing for the actual cleaning of the body, self, so on and so forth. The bubbles are just kind of aesthetic and people like them, and so we put castor oil in our soap recipe to give it bubbles. And you never want to use more than about 15% of castor oil. So that's just a little fun fact. The next thing we're using is coconut oil. Now, coconut oil you can of course get at the grocery store. You can get it in big amounts at Costco. You can order it online in large amounts. And coconut oil is the cleansing oil in our soap recipe. It is the oil that really cleans, exfoliates a bit, and so it's slightly abrasive, but you really need it if you want a soap that cleans your body well, cleans your skin well. You don't want to use more, in my opinion, and everyone's opinion on coconut oil is a little bit different. In my opinion, you don't want to use more than 40% coconut oil. In our recipe, we're using 10% of the castor oil, and we are using 25% of coconut oil. Because coconut oil can be drying of the skin when it's used in a soap recipe. It can, because as it cleans and exfoliates, it dries the skin out just a bit, and so we don't want a ton of coconut oil. But we also need things that brings moisture to the skin and brings nourishment to the skin. So that's where we have the olive oil. Olive oil is a standard in a lot of homemade soap making. Olive oil is wonderful for cleaning. It's wonderful for conditioning. It's wonderful for enriching. And so olive oil is it's a favorite oil of mine, a really great oil to use in soap making. The last ingredient we are using is lard. Now, if at your grocery store this container happens to be flipped around and it says manteca, yes, that's still lard. Just flip it around, you'll be okay. People are like, oh, my store doesn't have lard. They just have manteca. And that's the Spanish word for lard. And so just flip your little container around and you've got lard. And lard is rendered pig fat. And in the older days, lard was like the main ingredient of soap. Lard is wonderful for the skin. It's conditioning, it's moisturizing, and it makes just an absolute fabulous bar. So we are using 4 ingredients in this soap, and all of these ingredients you can get from your local grocery store. easily. I mean, you know where they are. They're in the baking aisle, no problem. So one thing that you do need to make homemade soap, and this is what kind of freaks people out a little bit with homemade soap, is lye, sodium hydroxide. Now lye, locally, Menards has this brand, which is called Santeen. I get mine from Essential Depot. I just got this to show you guys that you can use lye from a local store. It needs to be 100% lye, no additives, nothing else added. And lye in like a hardware store, Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, and I think Lowe's and Home Depot do have 100% lye. I'm just not sure on the brand. I knew that soap makers online, a lot of them use the Santeen brand from Menards, and so I figured I'd get the one that has been proven to be safe in soap making, and a lot of people use this one and really like it. Once again, I get mine from Essential Depot, but I'm making it today with this, so I'm excited. And once again, it's called Santeen, but in the stores, it is used and sold as a drain cleaner because it's incredibly caustic, and that's why people are worried and a little nervous about making their homemade soap. Now, soap without lye isn't soap. It's a detergent of some sort, or, you know, a lot of people get that melt and pour where they, at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, where they cut it up, they just melt it down and they remake the soap. That soap has lye in it. It's just already been cured. They made the soap with lye and then they cured it, put it in blocks to make it melt and pour so that you can make your own soap from that. That's wonderful. But we're making a cold process, kind of old-fashioned thing of soap today. So they use it as a drain cleaner because it's incredibly caustic. But when we mix it with our liquid and then mix it with the oils, it bonds with those oils. A process called saponification happens. That makes soap. It no longer is caustic. But until the lye bonds with those oils, it is caustic. By adding it to a liquid, we're using goat's milk for ours, and you can buy that in the store as well. I'll explain that here in a minute. But you can use water, tea, coffee, anything you want to mix with this lye to make your lye liquid that mixes with the oils to bond and make the saponification process happen. And so we need the lye. You can get that at Menards. That's the only thing you can't get at your grocery store. I have not seen a grocery store yet that carries 100% lye crystals. If there's one out there, let me know. But yeah, hardware stores, Ace Hardware a lot of times has 100% lye, Lowe's, Home Depot, and Menards, so on and so forth. You can order online as well. Food grade sodium hydroxide is what a lot of people order from Essential Depot. So we need that. We need the liquid. We're using goat's milk. If you don't have your own goats, that's fine. You can get goat's milk in the store. You can get it with the other milk in the refrigerated section if you want, or you can go a little bit cheaper route and go to the baking aisle and get cans of condensed goat's milk. You do need to add a little bit of water to bring the consistency back up to goat's milk. We milk our own goats and freeze, and so we've got goat's milk here. But you can also use distilled water. If you don't want to make goat's, or if you don't want to use goat's milk, or you don't have it, or don't want to get it from the store, you can absolutely use distilled water. You can use coffee, you can use tea, you can use any liquid pretty much. You can use regular cow's milk if you want. If you're using a milk though, you need to freeze it first because milk has sugars, proteins in it that when it's mixed with the lye, it always increases the heat. It can go up to 450 degrees, and that can scald those sugars in the milk. And so we freeze it first, and so that when we add the lye, it doesn't bring it up to a temperature that's going to scald the milk. And so if you have just regular water or coffee or something like that, just bring it to room temperature. If you want to refrigerate it, that does make the fumes from when you mix the lye, it makes the fumes a little bit less. If you have room temperature water and you mix your lye with it, you're going to get some fumes. So you want to do it under the exhaust fan of your stovetop. You want to do it outside if it's safe with no animals around or kids around. And you just want to do it somewhere where you've got plenty of ventilation, because if it's room temperature, you're going to get quite a few fumes from mixing the lye with your liquid. If it's frozen, and you can freeze the water if you'd like so it's less fumes. If it's frozen, there's hardly any fumes, and just make sure that you have some decent ventilation. We've got a fan going, and so we're good in this big area here. So I said the ingredients we need, some of the things that you need to actually do every process is something to mix the lye and the the lye and the liquid in, and I use these Anchor measuring cups. They're thick glass, and once you use something that touches lye, you can never use it again for anything that has to do with food. So if you're going to make soap, make sure you're using things that are either disposable or that you will never use for food again. If you're using anything metal, it has to be stainless steel. Otherwise, the lye will react to any kind of cast iron, any kind of aluminum, any kind of non-stick surface the lye will react with. So stainless steel, we have our stainless steel pot, and then thick glass works really, really well to mix your lye mixture with. Or a stainless steel bowl would actually work well too. So we've got something to mix our lye with. We have something to put our lye in to measure it out. This is just a simple container. Now lye by itself, you're like, well, if it's so caustic, why isn't it eating through this container? Lye without moisture is just simply lye, and it's not a problem. It's very, not safe, but it's not going to eat through anything. It's not caustic because it doesn't have any moisture. The minute you add moisture to lye, that's when it becomes caustic, and that's when it becomes corrosive. And so that's why with a drain, that's why they use it for drain cleaner. When you put it on the drain, it mixes with some of the liquid in the drain, and it just eats away at anything in that drain, hair, clogs, whatever, and clears it out. That's what it does. And so when we put it with water, that's when we need something a little more stable. But when we're just measuring it out, we can use something plastic. Once again, that will never touch food, never be used for food. So we need something to measure our lye in. We need something to measure our liquid in. And if your scale is really good, you can use this to measure the liquid in, but mine doesn't like how heavy this is. And so I just use a regular bowl, a lightweight bowl, to measure my liquid in. And because it's goat's milk, not caustic, it's fine. I can use just a regular bowl. And then once I measure it, I pour it into this. Because my scale doesn't like this heavy Pyrex, or I'm sorry, Anchor measuring cup. And so I do put my milk in something like just a simple bowl. You need a thermometer. I love these infrared thermometers. You can get them on Amazon for 15, 20 bucks. You can also use like the scientific thermometer, the big long one, and that's fine too. And this is just handy to have, period, for a lot of things that you do. You also, I recommend you have a spray bottle with vinegar. A little bit of lye is neutralized by vinegar, so if I splatter a little bit of lye on the counter or something like that, I can spray it with vinegar, and that will neutralize the lye so it doesn't eat through my counter. Because if you think about it, a lot of your surfaces have just a little bit of moisture on them. Your skin has moisture on it, and so if you get a little bit of lye on your skin, a little bit of lye with just a little bit of moisture, that's going to eat. Yeah, it's going to eat your arm pretty good. So that's why the next thing we have is protective gear. We do have safety goggles, and we do have gloves. And these are the nice long gloves that go up to almost my elbow, the dishwasher gloves. And we use those when we make soap, just in case we get splatters, that we can get some vinegar on it, wipe it down, and it's not on my skin. So we don't just leave it be. If I get splatters on these gloves while I'm stirring up the lye liquid or mixing it with the oils, I spray a little vinegar on it right away, wipe it off, and then it doesn't eat through the glove. All right, so you need your oils, you need your lye, you need your liquid, something to measurement. You need, if you're going to add essential oil to your recipe, you need something to measure out your essential oil. Today we are using orange eucalyptus, which is just orange mixed with eucalyptus. They are both wonderful essential oils, and the mixture is fabulous. You need a mold. We talked about that. You also need something to mix the lye mixture with the oils, because remember, they start bonding. That's what makes this saponification and makes the soap. I highly recommend a stick blender. If you use a stick blender, you cannot use it for food ever again, because it's touched lye liquid when you mix it up. So you can use a hand mixer. You can just stir it by hand. It takes longer to do it that way. This takes about 2 minutes to use a hand mixer. If you just do it by hand with a scraper, it will take maybe 10, 15 minutes, maybe even longer. These scrapers are only used for soap making. I don't use these for food at all because, once again, they touch the lye liquid. And so anything that touches lye never goes near food again. You need a scale. Now, let me tell you about a handy dandy trick. I am the messiest person in the world, so I put my scale in a simple Ziploc bag, and that way if I get any spills or oil splatters or anything like that, I get it on the bag, no big deal. Every couple weeks I change out the bag and just throw the bag away. My scale is pristine and clean, and I love it. I have it open on one side so there's not a big air pocket in there making issues when I weigh things. When you get a scale, you want to make sure it measures to 1/10 of an ounce. So, you know, up to pounds, so that if I need to, I can get, you know, because for example, our fragrance or our essential oil that we're adding, we only need 0.5 of an ounce, not even a whole ounce, only 0.5. So I need to be able to measure to 1/10 of an ounce with my scale, which is really, really great. And you need some kind of heat source. Right here we have a little stove top or a little cooktop that we're going to use. I don't like to use my regular glass top for soap making because if I get a splatter of lye or something, I don't want it ruining that quite expensive stove top. And so you need something to mix your oils and lye with, and that is a stainless steel pot. These are less than $10 at Walmart, which is really handy and really cheap. So we are going to start, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera closer so that you can actually get a bird's eye view of exactly what I'm doing through this process. I think that's going to be a lot better than you seeing it from there and not really understanding. But first, why do we make our own soap? Why not just buy it in the store? Well, the soap in the store, they take a lot of the glycerin out of the soap because they can sell it separately. Glycerin is what provides moisture and nourishment to your skin and just leaves it luxurious feeling. Now with us, when we make the soap, glycerin is a natural byproduct of the saponification process. And I have no clue how to remove glycerin from my homemade soap, so it stays in there, and it's going to stay in there for your homemade soap too. And so glycerin is absolutely fabulous. Also, you can see we're using 4 ingredients. Have you ever looked at the ingredients label of a bar of soap? Any bar of soap, you're going to find so many chemicals and words that you don't even know, and all those chemicals, I don't know. I just personally don't think they can be great for your skin. The goat's milk provides unique vitamins and minerals for your skin as well, which is why I love soaping with goat's milk. And we have the goats that give the milk. Why not? You know, in my opinion. You can add your own essential oil blend and look up essential oils, and certain ones do certain things. Lavender is going to calm you, peppermint is going to invigorate you. So you have so many options, and essential oils can be bought at the grocery store now, which is very cool. And we only need 0.5 of an ounce, so you can buy a little 1 ounce bottle, and it's not that expensive, which is so nice. So we are going to get started. The recipe I'm using for you guys today comes from soapcalc.net. I am not going to go through all of that on how I got the percentages or the weights. That can be another day. Today I'm just going to get into making a simple batch of soap so that you can make a simple batch of soap at home and have a blast. This is going to make 15 ounces of soap, just a bit under a pound. With soap making, we do everything by weight. We don't do any fluid ounces, even though the oils are fluid a lot of times. The olive oil, the castor oil is fluid. And so we do by weight, period, rather than by volume when we measure things out. So that's the nice thing about soap making. Everything is by weight. That's why one scale is just fine. And so that's why you can't do 2 cups of olive oil, because that might weigh different than 2 cups of castor oil. So anyways, soapcalc.net. If you want to make your own recipes, just go there, and there's YouTube videos explaining how to use soap calc. We're also not going to talk about super fatting today. That's for a different video. And I'm going to do a series of videos that have to do with lotion making, bath bomb making. Well, we already got the bath bomb and the lotion making one up, but I'm going to make a playlist of all like the bath and body products that we do here at the homestead. And so this will be in that playlist, and we're going to make more soaps. We're going to progressively get a little more complex. We're going to add shea butters and some other different oils. We're going to use different molds, and so we'll get more complex as we go on in the videos. But this one's going to be super simple, get you started. So now I'm going to get you the bird's eye view. Alrighty everybody, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to measure out our oils so that way we can get those melting on our little stovetop. So you just make sure your scale is at 0. If it's not, you just hit tare. That tare button in the middle, that just brings everything back to 0. No matter if there's something sitting on the scale or not, it just brings it back to 0. So you're going to see why that's important here in a minute. So I put my bowl on. Well, now I've got 3.1 ounces. Well, I need it back to 0 so I can start measuring things out. So I'm just going to hit that tare button, and that brings it back to 0, which is beautiful. So the first thing we need is we need 1.5 ounces of castor oil. That's going to give us our bubbles in our recipe, 1.5 ounces. So I'm just going to keep pouring the castor oil until I get to 1.5. So right there I'm at 1.3, so I slow down just a little bit. 1.4, 1 point, okay, well I went over to 1.6. That's not that big a deal. Overall, you want the amount of oils to be the same. So if I'm at 1.6 on castor because I accidentally went over, then I'm simply going to minus a 0.1 or a tenth of an ounce from the next oil. So you can see here our different oils that we have. Castor oil is going to be 1.5 ounces. Our next oil is coconut oil, and it's going to be 3.75 ounces. And we're going to round that up to the nearest tenth, so it's going to be 3.8 ounces is what we're doing. So we're going to take 0.1 ounce away from that coconut oil. So if you get exactly 1.5 ounces of castor, then you're going to do 3.8 ounces of coconut oil. Because we went a tenth over, we are doing 3.7 ounces of coconut oil. So I want to hit tare to bring it back to 0. Look at that, brings it back to 0. In this bag, you need to be a little bit careful because as you move things, it might add a tenth or take away a tenth, and so we are going to tare it down. All right, so my coconut oil, because welcome to summer, it's very, very liquidy, and I love that. It makes it easier to soap with. So we need if we got our castor oil right at 1.5, we would need 3.8, but we went 1/10 over, so now we need 3.7 of coconut oil. So we're just going to pour this in until we get 3.7. We're doing good. And we're going to try not to go over. That way I can give you guys the exact recipe. But it's good that that happens so you can see if it happens what you need to do. Rather than trying to take a tenth out, which is almost impossible, we just take a tenth off the next one. As long as it's just a tenth here or a tenth there. A whole ounce would be an issue, but a tenth here, a tenth there isn't a big issue. So there we go. We've got 3.7. Would have been 3.8 if we would have done the castor exactly right. So now I'm just going to dump the castor oil and the coconut oil in our stainless steel pot for now. And then come back and do the other two oils. And we're going to tare that back down to 0. So now we need, the next one is lard. That is our pig fat. Lard is phenomenal to soap with. So we need 5.3 of lard. 5.3 ounces of lard. We're going to make sure that says 0 before we start adding. 5.3. I'm just going to get that off with my finger. You can see this is a much lighter oil. It's taking more of it to get to 5.3 than it would have with our coconut. Oh, 5.2. We did good with that scoop. So now we just, 5.3. We breathed and it went to 5.3. That's perfect. All right, so 5.3. We're going to stick this in our stainless steel pot. All right, we're going to tare that to get it back down to 0. All right, our last oil that we need is olive oil, and we need 4.5 ounces of olive oil. 4.5 ounces of olive oil. So let's start adding it. Olive oil is a relatively light oil, so this is going to look like a bit. 4.5. 4.4. Try not to get it over because this is our last oil, so we won't be able to take any away from the next. There we go, 4.5. All right, and now we are going to add that to our stainless steel pot. And we are going to scrape out the bowl to get all these oils out. You want to try to get all the oil out of the bowl, because that oil is what's going to bond with the lye. So if we don't get all the oil out of the bowl, then the lye isn't going to have enough to mix with, and we're going to get what's called a lye heavy soap, which is just can be irritating to the skin in little amounts. A lot of amounts, it can cause issues, a little bit of chemical burns. So we just want to make sure we get all this in there. And this scraper works fine with being in with the heat, so we're just going to stick it right in there. I'm going to turn this burner on low, and we're going to let those oils melt down. Alrighty, so far we have not put on any of our protective gear because we haven't worked with anything that's been caustic. I like to do all just the regular stuff that's not caustic first without the protective gear, and then that way I can put on the gloves and the safety glasses for the lye. So next we are going to measure out our liquid, and we need a little bowl for that. So we're going to hit tare, which just brings everything back down to 0. And for this recipe, we need 5.7 ounces of liquid. It can be distilled water, it can be goat's milk, it can be tea, it can be coffee. We just need 5.7 ounces, and we're going to use this frozen goat's milk. We're going to get some of the liquid, but we're also going to get some of the frozen chunks here in a minute. So usually I add the frozen chunks first and then the liquid, so that way I can add just an ounce here or there with the liquid. But we're at 1.7. We need to get to 5.7, so we're going to add one chunk. We're going to add another chunk. We're at 5 right now. We got to add smaller chunks. 5.4 and 5.5. So we need 2/10 of an ounce, which is not much. So let's see if we can get that in. 5.6, just itty bitty bit more. 5.7, very good. So now you can see we have our goat's milk in here. Some of it's frozen, some of it's a little bit melted. This is absolutely perfect. We're just going to set that aside for a moment, and then we're going to do our last thing that doesn't require safety gear. We are going to measure out our essential oil. And this is a mix I've done myself of orange and eucalyptus. You can do just straight orange or straight eucalyptus, whatever you want, or straight lavender. Lavender is such a popular soap. So let's go ahead and add. We need 0.5 ounces of this. Now I'm going to put a little bit more just because the orange tends to dissipate a bit, so I'm going to put actually 0.6, and I like mine a little bit scentier. So scentier, is that a word? We're going to go 0.6, 0.5, 0.6. There we go. I like my scents a little stronger. And I recommend always with essential oils measuring them out in glass. A lot of essential oils will eat away at plastic, and so you really don't want to measure them in plastic anything. So there we go. We have that, and it smells incredible. So we're going to set that aside. All right, and now we are going to measure our lye. And so I'm putting on my safety gear. I'm putting on my safety glasses, and I'm putting on the gloves. Okay, and also what I do at this point is I get a little tub like this that I use for my soap making. It's got some vinegar on the bottom of it. And I get this ready because I want to put, after I get done with my things that I use lye in, I want to put them in something that they won't fall off the counter, or they won't, people won't think that there's something that they're not. And so I put them in that with a little bit of vinegar on the bottom, so just in case it drips or something like that, the vinegar will absolutely eradicate any of the corrosion of it. I get this ready because I'm going to spray out, after I use this, I'm going to spray that out with some vinegar and then put it in my tub. So I just get that tub ready to put the utensils in that have to do with the lye. So lye is just simply comes in, it can come in granules, it can come in flakes. This is granules, the Santeen. So we need 2.1 ounces of lye. So when you're doing the lye, you want to be very, very careful that you don't get too much in, because it's very difficult to get it back in the container. So we want 2.1 ounces of lye. So we are just going to start pouring very, very slowly. We're going to get up to 2.1 ounces of lye. So as it gets to the 1.9, I just kind of take a little break, because sometimes, like I said, you breathe and it goes up 1/10 of an ounce. And you do want to be absolutely exact. So there it is, 2.1 ounces of lye. That's exactly what we need. And I get done with the lye and I set it very much aside. Keep it on a towel so it doesn't hurt my countertop, but I set it aside. So at this point now, we are going to get ready to mix our lye with our liquid. And so our liquid is goat's milk. We are going to add our goat's milk right here to this nice Anchor thick glass measuring cup. I'm trying to get all of it out. All right, so now we are going to slowly add our lye. I've got my stirrer here. We're going to slowly add our lye and stir. So I'm going to add a little bit of lye. And I'm not right over it. I'm stepping back just slightly in case there's any fumes, but there's not. When it's frozen, there's really, I don't notice any, to be honest with you. So I'm stirring, and that lye is heating up the liquid because of the chemical reaction that happens when lye meets liquid or moisture. It's heating up the liquid. It's melting those milk chunks, those frozen milk chunks. So I'm scraping the bottom as I'm stirring. You can see those chunks are melting. So now I'm going to add a little bit more. I've added about 1/3 at a time. And I'm scraping the bottom as I stir. All right. And now I'm going to add the rest of it. All right. I set it there for a moment. I stir just to get it off the bottom. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that lye container in that little tote thing of vinegar, and I'm going to spray it with vinegar. There we go. So now, as I finish using things, I'll put them in there, and then I just use our utility sink to wash everything up. There we go. I'm going to check on these oils. You can see these oils are almost completely melted. The coconut oil is almost completely melted. I am actually going to turn off that burner, and I'm going to stir this oil just a bit. And the reason I'm stirring it instead of leaving it on to get hotter is because I want to mix these when they're about the same temperature. I want to mix this oil with the lye mixture when they're about the same temperature, anywhere under 115 or 120 degrees. So I'll tell you where that infrared thermometer comes in handy here. So I'm just getting all the chunks out of the oil. There's like 2 little chunks of lard that I see. Itty bitty little chunks of lard. There we go. That oil is completely melted, which is beautiful. I'm going to get my scale out of the way here. All right, so now we need to check the temperatures of our lye mixture and our oil and see if they're about the same temperature, under 115 or 120 degrees. Some people leave them out just to get to room temperature. Both of them get to room temperature, and that's fine. You can do that. I'm impatient, and so I like to get things mixed up and get them done. So I'm going to use my infrared thermometer. Oh, it's on Celsius. That's not going to help anybody. All right, we are at 116 degrees. Oh, it's moving a bit. I'm going to stir it up just slightly. 118 degrees. So that's under 120. That's nice. Now we're going to get a temperature on our oil. 150 degrees. So we need to cool down this oil. So what we're going to do is we're going to let that lye mixture sit, and we're just going to gently stir this oil to help it cool down. All right, I've been stirring this for about 5 minutes. So let's get a temp on it and see if it's getting close. Now this infrared thermometer just takes a temperature of the top, the surface, 117, 116, right around in there. Let's look and see what our lye mixture is. It's been sitting for the same 5 minutes, but I haven't been stirring it. So it should have kept its heat decent. We're at 110. So they're within about 5 or 10 degrees of each other. They're under 120. So we're going to call this good to go for us to mix these guys. So what we do is we always mix the lye into the oils. So you're pouring the lye into the oils. So I simply pour the lye into the oil. Try not to get it on the handle of your spoon, but that's okay. I got it on the lower part of the handle, not a big deal. So I'm scraping this out. And we're going to try something different for me. I always use my stick blender to mix, but because we have such a small amount, I am going to try just doing it by hand and seeing how long it takes. Now I stuck that Anchor measuring cup, I stuck that in our tub. I sprayed it with vinegar. So now we are going to try to hand mix our lye and our oil, and you can see they still separated, or they are still separated. They haven't come together yet. And this is a big pot. I'm used to making big batches of soap. And yes, it's taking a little bit longer with stirring. By now, if I was using my stick blender, by now it would be like a thick pudding already. We're gonna stick with it. We're gonna see if we can stick with it with the scraper until I get driven nuts. Okay, yeah, I'm driven nuts. That didn't take long. So we're gonna go to the stick blender. The stick blender is $10, $15. If you're gonna make soap, you're probably gonna do it a couple batches, and so that will more than pay for your stick blender. And so we are going to just put the stick blender in. Because this is a small batch of soap, I'm going to tip it, and you pulse your stick blender. Never push it in and hold it in, you just pulse. And you keep it completely at the bottom. The blade does not touch the bottom of the pot. It's fine, but you hold it against the bottom. Do not hold it up, otherwise you'll get splatter. So you hold it against the bottom of the pot. And now you come to the different traces. There's a thin, medium, and thick trace. We are trying to get to about a thin to medium trace. We want the oil to bond with that lye mixture, and then we will add our essential oil. If they don't properly bond together, if you don't mix it enough and they don't properly bond together, then what will happen once you pour the soap in the mold is the oil will separate from the lye mixture because they did not properly bond together. And so we're going to keep going until we get about a medium trace. And you can look up the different traces technology or what the people think. This is a light trace, not technology, terminology. Light trace is where when I lift it up and it drips down in there, it doesn't leave any kind of indentation. It just goes in and then you can't even tell it dripped. A medium trace would be where it starts leaving like little pools on the top when it drips in. So we're going to keep on mixing. All right, and from doing soap for a bunch of years now, I can tell we're at a heavy light trace. Does that make any sense? We are getting close to a medium trace, but we're still at a light trace. And so I'm going to add our essential oils right now. And isn't it handy that we already pre-mix these? I love it when it comes together like that. And we're going to scrape this out. And once again, this little bowl, because I'm touching it with this scraper that was touching the lye, it will never be used for food. This is used only for my soaping. And I'm putting this, I'm done with it, so I'm putting it in that tote back there with the vinegar. It doesn't need the vinegar, but I just happen to put it with that tote. So look at that beautiful orange of the orange and eucalyptus essential oil. Now, if you want any kind of exfoliation where there's a little bit of abrasiveness when you soap up to kind of get maybe your garden, you're working in the garden, or you're extra dirty, or you're making this for your husband who's a mechanic and you need to get grease off his hands, you can add some ground almonds, you can add some coffee grounds, you can add anything that's abrasive like that. You can add about, I would say about a half a teaspoon to this recipe. Now I'm not pushing the button, holding it, I'm pulsing it. You always pulse with stick blenders. Never do a long hold, otherwise you will burn the motor of your stick blender. Now you can see we're starting to reach still just kind of right on the cusp of a light and a medium trace. Now I know they're mixed well enough now where they would not separate if I poured this in the mold now, but I want to cool it down just a little bit more so that we don't have an eruption in the mold. Because this is a round, tall mold and there's only the surface area of the top right here, this will heat up a lot in this mold, and I don't want it to heat up so much that it erupts out of the top. With my other molds, they're rectangles and there's a lot of surface area on the top to let that heat escape, and so they don't crack, they don't volcano up. But because there's a little bit of surface area on this mold, I want this mixture to cool down a little bit. Because soap, as it saponifies, which is the chemical process of that lye mixture bonding with the oils, it causes heat. It creates heat. It's a chemical reaction, so it creates heat. And so that's why it's sometimes a loaf of soap will crack, or sometimes it'll volcano up, is because of that heat. The more sugar you add to a soap, let's say you add honey or something like that to a soap, the more it heats up. So you just kind of got to watch that kind of stuff. If you want to add honey to this recipe, you certainly could. Just add about a half a teaspoon of honey at this point. So now we're going to kind of tip it down this way. We're going to go ahead and pour it, which is absolutely fine. So this, once again, I'm going to put this in our little tote of vinegar. All right, so now we have our mold here, and we're simply, let's see if I can do this on camera, we're simply going to pour this in. All right, we're going to scrape it out well. I'm stingy. I like to scrape all the soap out. And actually, it's good to scrape all the soap out because when I clean these pots later, I don't want a bunch of soap going down in my pipes. And hardening in my pipes and clogging up my pipes. And so I get as much of the soap out as I can. I've never had a problem with my pipes. But I let this sit, my pots I let sit for 24 hours, and then I clean them because at that point I don't even have to add dish soap. It's just like soap already. It's already become soap after that 24 hours. And so it's like gives it its own soap for cleaning. All right, now I thought I had this recipe perfect that it would fill a Pringles can to the top with... I've never done just one Pringles can before, so I usually do batches of about 5 to 10 pounds of soap. But I'm going to have to tweak this a little bit. In the description below, I will have the recipe that we just did, and as you can see, it filled it. There's probably about maybe a fifth left. And so it will have the recipe that we did today that fills it up to that point. But then I will also recalculate and redo and get you another recipe with the amounts that fills up the Pringles can all the way to the top. We'll do another one, or I'll do another one off camera. And then I will put that recipe as well. I'll put the recipe we did today, and then also put the second recipe with the amount of oils and lye and liquid you need to fill this Pringles can all the way to the top. So there'll be two recipes, and hopefully I'll make it clear in the description which one is which. We're going to use the same oils, but I mean, if you're going to do it, you might as well fill up the Pringles can, right? Alrighty, everybody. I appreciate you joining me today to make our batch of soap using everything from the grocery store except for the lye, which we got from Menards. But now this we are going to let sit for 24 hours. If it's super, super humid, we might let it sit for 36 hours, but our house is pretty dry, and so 24 hours usually does just fine. Join me for the video next time on unmolding the soap and showing you how we do that, and then showing you how we cut it, and then it sits for 4 weeks. With cold processed soap, you need to let it cure, and cure just simply means letting it sit for 4 weeks at least, so that the moisture evaporates out and makes it a harder, longer lasting bar. After about 24 hours, the soap has completely saponified. It has become soap. It can technically be used, but it still has a ton of moisture in it, and it would become a soupy mess as soon as you started using it in the shower or used it under the faucet or whatever. It would become just a really soft bar of soap. And so that's why you want to let it cure for at least 4 weeks. The longer you let cold processed soap cure, the better it becomes. My best bars of soap are the ones that I have forgotten about, or that have fallen behind my dresser, or have been neglected or whatever and sat for who knows how long. I have one bar I found that I think was at least 3 or 4 years old, and I have been using that bar in the shower for the last 3 months. And I scrub every day. If I'm garden work and being outside and stuff like that, you know I'm a scrubber. And it has lasted just over 3 months. It is the hardest bar. It has no scent left. I think it was scented with carnation at the beginning. It was a Valentine soap. It has no scent left, but it is the most luxurious bar I have ever used. And so if you can let this sit even longer than 4 weeks, it's going to be better. If you want the scent nice and strong, then you can start using it right at the 4-week mark, and that's fine. All right, so that's how you make soap. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below or catch us on Facebook and comment there. Super excited to make soap with you guys today. It's a really easy recipe. Once again, we just use olive oil, coconut oil. What else did we use? Lard and castor oil. We used essential oil. We used the sodium hydroxide or the lye with goat's milk. And so all stuff that you can get in the store, which is so awesome. So remember, do what you can with all you have wherever you are. Homesteading is more of a mindset rather than having to live out in the country, on a farm, on a homestead. Anywhere can be your homestead. It can be in an apartment, it can be in a duplex, it can be anywhere. So you do what you can. I love that. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye. And it makes, hey guys, quit. Dogs, quit. And it makes a really nice round soap mold. Why are they in here? Hello.